All right, good evening, YouTubers. It's Saturday evening, day before Mother's Day. So I've been working on lots of projects and been trying to film some footage, but I haven't been very good at releasing new videos, but I'm working on it. So out here in the shop tonight, finishing up a project. So I decided to do a Mother's Day project for my mom and for my wife. So I had some leftover oak, 1x4 oak, and what I came up with was I'll build some simple picture frames, and then we'll put a picture of my daughter in her prom dress in the frames, and then there'll be gifts for Mother's Day tomorrow. So I've been working on the frames, and I've pretty much got them finished. So here they are. It's simple 1x4 stock oak from Lowe's, and I ripped it down. I believe they're 1.5 inches, or, well, let's measure it. It's 1.5 inches. I ripped it down, and then I made 2 5x7 frames and 1 8x10. And I decided to use a simple router bit. I believe it's a Roman ogee or a standard ogee, not sure which. Basically for both sides of the wood, and then I cut a simple groove down the center. I'm not sure if that'll show up very well, but right down the center I cut a groove with the table saw just to add a little extra detail. They came out pretty well. I used the miter gauge for my table saw to cut the miters, the 45-degree miters. It didn't come out perfect, by no means, but they're not bad for amateur DIY guy in his garage whipping up some picture frames. Ideally, I probably need to make me a miter sled that I can accurately set perfectly every time to do better miters. And the wood wasn't the greatest either, so that made it a little bit of a challenge. But they're not terrible. I glued the miters together, and despite my best efforts to clamp these things together, I did a terrible job trying to use standard clamps. I think those belt clamps or those picture frame clamps or whatever, they probably are the way to go. If you're going to make a bunch of picture frames, probably would be worth the investment. I ended up just trying to hold these things together while the glue dried. Ultimately, they stuck pretty well, but then I also decided that I was going to put splines in the edges. Since that was a kind of a last-minute decision, the only contrasting wood that I had was poplar, and I got to tell you, I'm not real happy with how that turned out. I should have just used oak for the splines and just had it match, or something dark like walnut, which I don't have on hand. So I basically used what I had, and the splines don't look that great, but it is what it is. It's okay. So in order to cut the splines, I made me a quick spline jig, which you'll see in the video. Just real quick, out of some MDF 2x4 and a piece of plywood, I was able to cut the splines, basically a kerf width of the table saw blade, and then I ripped a piece of poplar and cut out the splines and glued them in there and clamped it shut. And they came out okay. So after that, I decided I wanted to mix up my own varnish. So I used a homemade recipe that I see online. A lot of folks use. It's basically 1 part boiled linseed oil, 1 part mineral spirits, and 1 part polyurethane. And I got the men wax satin, so polyurethane. So basically 1 part of each of those, mix it together. The boiled linseed oil makes it really nice, like soak in. It's mostly clear, so it just kind of made the oak a little honey color. And then of course the polyurethane adds a little protection. And I think they came out pretty well. Pretty happy with the finish. Sanding wise, I just used a jitterbug sander and then a little bit of hand sanding. And then the splines, I actually used my belt sander, which I got to tell you, that worked out great. I left the splines proud of the frame, and I trimmed off the excess best I could with the table saw to get it close. And then I just went over to my belt sander and used the belt sander to take down the rest of it all the way flush with the frame. And the splines came out perfect as far as flush with the frame. So I think these came out pretty well. I'm pretty sure they'll be well received. They're not the best frames in the world, but it's the thought that counts. I made them, so we'll put a picture in there tonight in each of them, and we'll give them to the ladies tomorrow, and hopefully they'll enjoy them as much as I enjoyed making them. So again, a quick little project. I had the leftover piece of oak. Decided to rip it down. Used a miter or a router bit that I already had. It's an ogee. You could use a round over. Just some decorative type edge, you know, on both sides. I decided to cut a kerf in the middle just to break up the wide piece. And then a simple varnish finish. And we got ourselves a gift and some picture frames. So thanks again. I've had a lot of subscribers lately. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the views. And if you like this video, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed already, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, as it helps me out a lot. So thanks, and have a nice day.